Well, hello everyone. Hey, it's DBJ. I'm here with the two channels, RP Gamer and Darius Jonah. It's Lath and Brian. You guys can introduce yourselves, please. Let's go
You
with
first, my friend.
yeah.
Hi, I'm RP Gamer, and I do pretty much the same as DBJ with my somewhat daily videos. They haven't been that daily recently, but do 10-15 minute videos of just rambling and showing off the countryside. I think people watch for the countryside more than me, but
Oh yeah,
well.
yeah. That is some prime real estate right there, mate.
Yeah.
No, mate. I actually like what I am. No, you're not going to get an introduction for me. What I actually do, dude, and this is legitimately while I'm doing chores like washing up and stuff like that, I just put you on and then just turn it over and I listen to you as I'm going through, and I have it on repeat, so I like get just different episodes bopping around, and it's a lot of fun to just listen to your voice because you got like awesome resting ASMR voice. That's how I would describe your voice, man. Anyway, hello, my name is Darius Jonah. People call me Lath because that's my actual name, and I run the channel Darius Jonah. I have the accolade of being one of many people who took part in the 30-day world building challenge, a title which I still don't know how to say properly. And I also run a series which used to be twice a week and then became once a week and then became once I actually am able to not work for a little while, I will actually make a fucking episode. But now I'm also kind of like the big thing of me is rather than these two fine gentlemen who come up with like tips and tricks talking about different things, I like talking more about the philosophy and the kind of the thought process behind why we do certain things in role-playing games.
Cool. Well, as you guys and viewers know, or maybe you don't know, each day is a different theme. So today is Tips and Tricks Tuesday. So Brian thought it would be a great idea to come up with some of our favorite mechanics. Usually that means that these are mechanics that are gaming mechanics that come from other games, usually in reference to games smaller than the world's most popular role-playing game, which is Dungeons and Dragons. And if you're someone who is like a specialist, right? You're a person who plays one game only, end story, period. That's it. I would say that at least discovering other role-playing games can give you a little tip or trick in how they go about using a gaming mechanic or a randomizer or some kind of ruling to create a feeling that creator is looking for. I will say that many of the mechanics that you'll see out there can be hyper specific because it either sets the mood or the tone or the feeling that the creator wanted, and it may not be appropriate for a widespread audience, but they're still really cool anyway if you wanted to use them. So I have one I can start out with, but you guys can. All right. This one comes from a game that used to be called Nightmares of the Sleeping Dead, and I believe the game is now called spelled XAS, and the second word is ear class. What is the gentleman's name? Vail. His last name is Vail, Vail. Anyway, the gentleman put out a Kickstarter, and while he was playtesting it, he asked me to do a couple of read-throughs and such, which I was just very flattered. And there's a skill/growth mechanic in it that I really like that reminded me of Fate, but I felt like it was far had a better immersive tone to it. So okay, here's the deal. The characters start out with like 5 very extremely basic words that describe their character. So someone could be a survivor, or someone could be an archer, or a farmer, or barbarian, or something. Someone could be an investigator, or what have you. And then as you gain experience, you add another descriptor onto that word. And so if you are a survivor, you get like a +1. But if you add a descriptor onto it, now if both the survivor and the descriptor are applicable, you get +2. And as you continue a descriptor, you get +3, +4, up to +5. So an example would be, I'm a survivor. In the game, you go up in level, and let's say you are a survivor, mountain survivor. And then you add another descriptor, might be a mountainous survivor in the, I don't know, Shadow Crags. And then it might be mountainous survivor in the Shadow Crags during the winter season, or something like that, or what have you. And the descriptors could be hyper specific to whatever game you're playing. So two characters playing, who one person's a survivor and plays in one game, maybe it's like a deep city noir kind of investigation, and another one could be high fantasy travel, dungeon delving, or something of that nature. And I thought that was a very interesting way of character growth, that your growth is a description of the places you've been and the things you've done and the people you interact with, and you get mechanical bonuses stacked based on how much of that description is involved in what you are interacting with. I hope that was that made sense. I don't know if it did or not.
It certainly did, and it sounds like a really useful thing. Straight up, because in a campaign that I'm running right now, I had every character come up with a concept that basically is exactly that. And I just did it for flavor. But now I'm thinking maybe I can come up with like a mechanical use for it using that thing. So that's really cool.
Yeah, what I like about it, the way you describe it, it sounds like they get bonuses and benefits depending on how much they've been paying attention to the game.
Or how they
like
can twist things.
Yeah, how they can twist it.
Yeah, absolutely. It really, I mean, it's like the player gets the benefit, like you say, for investment in the game, and then it's literally written on their character sheet. So now no one forgets it. So if, let's say, they go through these like Scar Crag Mountains or something, and it's 12 sessions later, it's written on the character, so it's like a reminder of what they've been through. And literally you could assemble all of the player characters' growth together to kind of weave this story as they've moved from place to place. So I like it. I see the benefit in it. It seems like something very simple, and I could see I could see some players like trying to min-max it a little bit, like trying to force their descriptors into a situation that it doesn't call for. But I mean, that's
you get that in every system. You get players that try and work the rules to their favor.
Yeah.
And also it would be kind of a thing of like, depending on the culture of the game, like the culture of the game, there would be people who are just not likely to do that, or maybe it's okay for the culture. Certainly, if you want to institute this kind of rule, you have to maintain the communicative aspect of things to make sure that people kind of understand how much they are able to take the ruling.
Exactly.
I love systems that encourage player involvement and interaction with the world, rather than just being able to come, pull up the character sheet, and roll a few times and then go home.
Right. I mean, the way it's to me, the way it seems like it's designed is, a character could have acrobatics or something, and then next they'll get another bonus if they have acrobatics in a roof running, parkour or something, and then they get another bonus if it's like acrobatics roof running in the city of Dalmesh or something. And so you could keep going, and it gets hyper specific as you go along, but it actually involves the player in saying, hey, this is the location that I think is important for my PC, and I would like a bonus for it as well. So it's like a mechanical gift and then a role-playing gift, benefit. Like, hey, thanks for it's like a thank you to the GM by the player saying, I found this very exciting. I'd like my growth to be in this location, But I took up all the time. You guys come up with something.
First, I'll unmute myself. I'll go through with a really, really simple rule. It's a very, very simple thing. And it actually is more of a straight up house rule. And it's kind of something that was part of a large number of people who I've played with. But it does have a basis in a game. But it was a very, very, it comes from a game called Fiasco. If you guys don't know what Fiasco is, imagine like a Farley Brothers film or a Coen Brothers film, this kind of thing. We're talking about things like Fargo or The Hangover, these kind of like films that are that are either really dramatic and like really intense, or really farcical and really silly, like imagine that kind of thing. And Fiasco is, you're making a game like that. You're making a movie like that. And in that, it is important to record whenever you roll a die, and you only roll a die at like fixed points in the game. It is important to record whether or not you rolled an odd or an even number. They use D6. They use a D6. So it's very small number of small amount of numbers. So it's like really important. So the thing, what my lot kind of took from it is actually just calling a bet and then going through with it. So it would be a situation like somebody got caught in a flood. Someone got caught in a river or something like that, and they go, okay, did I lose any of my arrows? Did my gun get wet? Something like that. And honestly, the GM is not interested in like that. It's not really important. It's an important idea, but it's not exactly like a big important part of the story. So you just say odd or even, and they pick, and then you just roll a dice with an even number, so like a D6, D4, whatever. And if it lands on what they called, they get to choose. They decide what mechanically that is. So generally speaking, they get something in their favor. If it's odd, it's basically the opposite of whatever they call. So in the I don't want my gun to get wet scenario, they call, yeah, okay, sure, your holster happens to have some kind of waterproofing on it and it holds. If it's not, nah, I'm sorry, not only is your gun wet, but probably any ammunition you got saved up is also wet. So there's this kind of idea of making a judgment on what would just situations which are a bit difficult to make thing. So like another one which, like the most recent one which I remember, which was like really like straight up really weird, was most of the time when I run games, I run them in maps, because I like the idea of having just like this physical frame of reference. But there was this one time when there was this quick kind of the equivalent of a drunken bum fight, because one of my characters was getting his money nicked by basically homeless people, and he was kind of like, no, screw this. So, but in any case, he was like, "Is there a barrel which is full of stuff?" And I was like, "What stuff?" And he's like, "It doesn't matter. Is it full? Is there a barrel full of stuff?" And I was kind of like, I don't know." Okay, and that's the situation where you bring that in.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot of. You definitely have to have everyone willing to take the agency, but not but not go so gonzo that the agency ends up ruining the game. Like, oh, you're playing like a detective game, and someone says, is there a chance Godzilla comes out of the ocean or something? It's like, all right, guy, like really, and there's always some one person that wants to take it so
That
far
far.
out of the field. Yeah, it's like, no, let's, and you never want to say no, but there's plenty of like, you're holding yourself back, like, really, Godzilla, the sky's open and a big giant hand reaches down and grabs it, like.
Okay. Now here's for a tangent, dude.
Okay.
Have you ever played a game called Mutants and Masterminds?
Yes.
Have you ever heard of the variable superpower?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It's the retcon power. If you get it high enough, you can just say straight up, yeah, like, oh, aliens are invading. Have they invaded before? And the DM just goes, no. Okay, variable 6, fate point. Yes, they did. Are they allergic to the common cold? No, of course not. They, like, the last time they invaded, variable faint point. Yes, they are. They all die. And that is legitimately the power. That's one of Batman's superpowers. He's got a belt that's variable 4.
Yep. Yeah, I used to play the old Mayfair DC Heroes rules, and they had like Omni gadgets in there, and it just had a number, and you could say, I pull out a gadget and it happens to be this thing. Now luckily the mechanics didn't allow you to like pull out dimension warping, time traveling objects, because you had to give it a rating, but it was very much like that. Like, oh, I just happen to have and then you name whatever it is, and if it's a level 6, that's what it is. If it's a level 4, that's exactly what it is, and you just happen to have it. And I remember I played with a guy who the idea was that he used to be a construction worker or something, and I mean he played it for gags, but like he just happened to have a ladder on him, or like a power drill, or like a cement mixer, and it's like, dude, you're hanging off the edge of a building. You're like, yeah, but I'm going to pull out a ladder. Where was
pull out a ladder and use it to climb to the bottom of the building?
It's like, I mean, he would never like pull something that would destroy the game, but it was like the reality of it was like, where are you carrying a 40-foot ladder on you? It's like, I just happen to have it in my pack. It's like, it's so stupid. But I mean that was a very, very comic bookish kind of thing. So yeah, he had fun with it. Luckily, he didn't try to pull out Godzilla or something. But but yeah, you really have to have someone who can have synergy with a group. So if you have like a variable pass fail and you have to describe it, yeah, you really need to have a good relationship with the people involved, in terms of, hey guys, this is what the game's going to be about, please stay within those parameters.
Yes.
It sounds like me in these chats pulling Godzilla out of nowhere.
Oh no, not at all, man.
Going random.
Oh, cut that out.
Random with it all. Yeah, there's a Jaguar there. Yeah.
That was fun. Oh man, you'd have been there. I hope the Jaguar's okay. But so RP, do you have any mechanics or anything that really like
Well, a mechanic I really like is from the age system, the stunt system in age, where it's. I haven't properly played the full rules, just the Dragon Age variation, but where you roll 3 dice, and then if you get a double, you get the skill points to use on them. Do stunts,
Yeah.
like knocking them back, or doing double damage, or attacking more than one enemy.
Far and away, like if I was if I could reach into D&D and say I would decide to change one thing, I would probably remove the crit fail, crit success, and put in a system for stunt, because they're basically the same thing. They're basically like stunting is critting, because you kind of like gain an additional thing on top of your roll, and it is something that I really love. Although something that is going to kind of always be an issue, specifically with stunts, is they're going to entirely be beholden to what basically the rules say you're allowed to do. So the stunt system, I actually have it somewhere. I have all the stunt stuff here. But anyway, basically there's a fixed things that you can do. And if you want to do anything that doesn't fit into any of those things, you're snookered. You can't do them, because they're designed to be very, very balanced to them.
Right. I like that. I like the idea of like earning stunts like through your rolls, which has always been a problem with Dungeons and Dragons, that it's based on old bones, so you can crit fail on a d20 and then get the opposite on, like, say, a die roll for damage. So you can roll a 19 or a 20 on a d20 and then roll a 1 for damage, and the two kind of don't mesh. Thanks, Jared. Sorry, looking at the chat. But I like the idea of, like, if you roll high enough, you can do other things. And maybe the stunts would probably be better if there was like a short list that anyone can pull from. Like, maybe specifically for the character types, they have their own 3, 4, or 5 stunts, but then there's like a list of 8 to 10 that anyone can do because it's appropriate for anyone to do it, right? Like, I don't know, or the game master allows any, there's a big fight in a warehouse and anyone could have the chance to knock the crates onto the bad guys or something, right? So that may not be limited to only the warrior type or something. Maybe the scared and frail scientist character is running through the warehouse, makes a crit and says, I want to pull a rope or a net that just happens to be topples these other crates on top of the bad guys. And I wouldn't want to be the person that says, well, you can't do it because it's not in your character type, when it might make sense for the situation. So maybe I'd make my own house rule and say, yeah, you can do it because it makes a lot of sense.
Well, I mean, it'd take a lot of work to fit into another system, because the age system was built with stunts in mind. So to just plant them into other things would take a bit of work. But I think they'd work once you got around the.
Yeah, the main one would the main thing that would have to immediately change is how they were generated. The AGE system uses multiple die rolls in order to kind of generate, and it depends on what those multiple die rolls do. That generates the stunt. D&D, there's only one d20, or at most like 2d12 or 2d6 or something like that for damage. So there would have to be something new introduced into it that would kind of make stunt points. Although I honestly love the idea of it. I love the idea of including stunt points into Yeah.
If you were getting rid of the crit fails and crit successes to fit this in, you could say that if you roll over a certain number, you get a fixed number of points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pathfinder, um, and this segues into something that I use. Like Pathfinder 2.0 has stated that like they've got rid of the crit fail or roll 1, roll 20, and I believe now it's 10 above, 10 below. So adding your bonuses, if you roll 10 or more above what is needed, I'm just making example. Someone has an armor class of 14 and you roll a combined of 24 or more, you get a crit. So and then if the person has an armor class of 14 and you roll a 4 or below, it's a crit fail. So you have a crit success, crit fail with a range of 10. I tend to look at things, maybe it's not so much of a crit as a yes, but, or no, and kind of thing, where if you roll less than 5, or if you roll within 5, above or below what you need, that you either succeed but succeed a little bit, or you fail but fail a little bit. So let's say someone has an armor class of 14 and you roll a 17, you're only 3 above what you need. So you hit, but there's a little complication. And then I go backwards the other way. So you need to jump across a crevice and you need to roll a 14 or more, and you roll a 12, you could succeed, but you grab on the edge of the ledge with your fingertips and you're stunned for a round or something or whatever. So I use that for Dungeons and Dragons. It's my own house ruling, but I still think with a single die mechanic, like RP says, you can still have variations in the descriptor and how it interacts. I still think there's a way to do it.
Yeah, certainly, it's a very, very good idea.
Yep.
What was that? What's his name that you were talking about? Like to fail by, or to?
Usually, it's referred to as okay. Specifically, I actually use them in those environment books that I've been writing, where there'll be like if you are within 5, so it's like there'll be like a little breakout box where it will say if you fail by 4 or less, this happens. 5 or more, it's a complete failure. And then if you succeed by 4 or less, it's this. And then 5 or more, it's a complete success. I don't know if I suppose I can find something in here, but anyway, the idea is that if you are like within 4 above or below, that's where the complications happen. And then if you're 5 or more in either direction, you either just completely fail or completely succeed. And then to further add to the descriptor, you can have a critical success and critical failure on either end as well. You roll a 1 or a 20. So, and I use that as a generalization in, like I don't know, someone's got a spear and they want to stab the dragon, and they need to roll over a 14. They roll a 17, and I'm like, okay, you stab the dragon, but the spear point gets stuck in his scales. And okay, so and then that can move on to something a larger descriptor, like, oh well, if it's stuck in its scales, I'm going to run over it with my hammer and hit the end of the spear and shove it up the dragon's rear or something like that. I just made it rhyming. Yeah. And also Jared says Pathfinder is following the idea that statistically some creatures would be impossible to hit, or you're so skilled you never miss. And 5e things are pretty overpowered and swingy in that regard. Rolling a single die, especially the d20, is very swingy. And if you're just going by pass-fail systems, then it can be very like fail, pass, fail, crit, hit, complete fail, and goes up and down. And Pathfinder's trying to merge the D20 into what some like, OSR people, or even the AGE system, where if you roll 3d6, it's not as swingy. So the crits, the high crits, and the highs and lows tend to be far more rare. I'm going to slightly I don't want to say disagree with Jared. I'm going to say that Dungeons and Dragons is known for being swingy, and that's part of the game, to have those like swingy moments. So I'm going to say that it's built on old bones. And yeah, there are plenty of creatures that can't be hit, or someone who's very skilled tends to crit more than someone else who doesn't, which really mathematically doesn't happen in Dungeons and Dragons. If you roll 20, if a 20 is the only time you get a crit, or I know there's things where you can roll a 19 or 18 to crit, but statistically it doesn't make sense if, say, one person is far more skilled than someone else, because they still have the same ability to roll a 20, same chances to roll a 20.
I mean, I feel sorry for the designers behind Dungeons and Dragons now, because they probably have all these ideas, but they can't change it too dramatically, because then people will come out saying, well, it's not Dungeons and Dragons anymore.
Right. I think it's struggleable. Guy Gax himself said, you just make up what you think you need for the time, and it doesn't matter if you own it and buy it, it's yours. You can do whatever you want with it. I don't feel like anyone should be beholden to anything that's in the rules. You make up the rules, everybody just agrees to it, and you move on. And then if it sucks, you go, maybe, hey guys, this rule sucks that we just modified, let's go back to the old one. And you go, I don't think it's a big deal. Whether you play by, whether your rules as written, or you house rule it, which I find rules as written to be kind of wrong, because even implementing the rules themselves can vary by person by person, and there's plenty of rules that people who say that they follow rules as written that they ignore as well. I think encumbrance is probably the first rule that goes out the window. Even with people who claim that they're that they're like, I play by the rules exactly as written, and it's like, no, you don't, because you haven't added not a single gold piece onto the weight that your characters, it's and some of it can be a little ridiculous. It's like, I'm lightly encumbered, but if I carry this candle, I'm now heavily encumbered. And it's in real life, things aren't that black and white,
It turns out that every D&D character is a JCB that just cannot go above their weight limit. If they just go like 1 ounce above it,
right,
the whole thing's bust. Yeah.
Yeah, it's silly. What's another mechanic that I like? Okay, I'll pull this out. 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I like their aid system. I made that up. Advantage, inspiration, disadvantage.
Yes.
I like that. I think I like the idea that simply that it got rid of charts and charts of modifiers. I cannot stand looking up +2 because of this, and then -1 because of this, and another +3, and don't give me a breakout box with modifiers. Just give me. I like the advantage disadvantage mechanic. It's very simple, simple rule, and I know that there's plenty of websites out there that have tried to do the mathematical breakdown, which I think generally goes into like a +3 or -3 in general. But of course, it starts to it fluctuates, because someone may have a greater chance of success or failure. So the second roll may or may not be that important. But whatever the case may be, I still like it. I think it's very simple. Everyone likes to roll some dice, and you sit on bated breath, whether rolling to see whether you succeed or fail. I like that.
I was actually going to bring the advantage disadvantage system up, because I just find it very difficult to think of how to implement it in the other systems I use, such as Age and the Pokemon system because they use multiple D6s to roll. So but if you introduce advantage disadvantage, just like instead of 3 D6, they're rolling like 6 D6 and
Yeah.
going the higher value and that, and it just
A house rule that I introduced, which is it's based not only on the advantage system, but also on the aiding system that comes from D&D, specifically D&D 4e. Like in D&D 4e, you can say, I aid this person, and then you roll the same roll, but your DC is lower. It is 10 plus half your level. And if you go above that, you just give them a straight +2 to the roll, you know? The one that I have, which I use in my AGE game, is a bit different. It's you roll exactly the same roll, yeah, but you can pick one person to be the primary and one person to be the secondary. The secondary rolls first, and if they succeed, they can give what's called a D3, but that's literally you just halve the stunt die and you give them that as a bonus. So they can give up to 3 points, extra as part of the thing. That's my version of advantage, but I mean, like, like as you can kind of see, this is kind of my game is a bit idiosyncratic. It's very much based on we are weirdos who like rolling lots of dice,
Well,
yeah.
I mean that's the thing, right? I mean, I think there's a game that uses boons and banes, where it's like you and I believe it's a D20 system. I want to say Dungeon World. I can't remember the game system, but anyway, it's instead of the advantage disadvantage of rolling 2 dice, you either you roll a D6, and if you get a bane, it's like some kind of negative. You just roll the D6 and that subtracts from it. And then if you get a boon, you roll a D6 and you get the bonus. And that's basically the system. If like you're having a big fight in a thunderstorm or something and everyone's like hindered by it, then you roll a D6 and then subtract from whatever you're trying to do. And that's a very simple modifier with die rolling as well. Jared says a couple of things. He says screwing around with the rules is a great way to see why the normal rules exist. And then he also says that it's also a good way to experiment with how mechanics create a different game feel when playing. And now isn't that the crux of it, right? Like if you screw around with one rule, it kind of proves the point of why the game creators created it, but then sometimes different people want different things out of the game, so maybe you do want to screw around with the rule because everyone's playing Dungeons and Dragons and they want to create like a more of a Game of Thrones feel, which may not have a rule for that kind of interaction. So someone may say, hey, listen, we're going to incorporate this rule into the game so we have more like a social, blackmail, intimidation kind of social interactions and make them more like combat. And someone say, yeah, let's do that. Let's add that into the game and create something.
Another thing that Jared Premont has put forward is the idea of exploding die, which is, I love that. I love that system. I used to play World of Darkness a lot when I was younger, and I loved the fact that you could roll it could be like, okay, the only way that you can succeed in this is if you roll like a maximum. If you roll like 5 successes and you got 2 die, and you roll 2 10s, and you roll again, you get another 10, and you roll again, and you get a 9 out of 10, and you think like, yes, screw you, world.
I mean, there's fun in that, right? Like grabbing dice and then rolling. You're like, oh man, I get to roll them again, and I mean, there's a psychological, like a gambler's high that you get from that, and which as many of us are game designers, inside of us, and sometimes the logic of the dice may not fit with the emotional impact of the dice, right? So you may say, well, it might be better to roll one die, but the psychological feeling of grabbing multiple dice and rolling them might be better suited to the game you're trying to design.
Yeah.
Um,
Shadowrun.
Yeah.
If you ever want to play any kind of running high, play an explosives expert in Shadowrun 4th edition, because if you can get high octane C4 and then just burn an edge in order to immediately get a success and stuff, you're just rolling 30 d6s, and it doesn't matter if you succeed because you immediately succeed because you've rolled 30 successes already. That's one way of doing it. Yeah. Another one which which kind of comes from, like, it's sci-fi, so it's a bit better. It is this is a specific rule, but it actually has the basis of there being a variant to kind of psychological or hallucinogenic attack. So this comes from Warhammer, which is, which isn't particularly special in my game, in my world, but I ran a fantastically influential game of Warhammer 40k role-playing games, which really had a big effect. And this is literally something that exists in many different forms across all the different games, and it was called the hallucinogenic effect table. There were 2 weapons, and they were the only 2 weapons that could access this particular roll. And it was literally, if you hit somebody, you have to roll a d100. And if you roll doubles on the d100, you could roll on this thing. Here are some selections from the hallucinogenic effects, right? I'm only little. The character who is struck believes he has shrunk to half their normal size, and everything else is big and frightening now. Another one, I can fly. The sky looks so big and inviting, the character flaps their arms trying to imitate a pterra squirrel. He may do nothing but jump up and down on the spot. If he is standing on the ground level, he may throw himself in a random direction. If he is above ground level, he will immediately attempt to jump out the window. My 2 personal favorites, though, are the ones. Is the 1 and the 0, the 10 roll. The 1 is, it just says bugs. The character drops to the floor, screaming as he claws off imaginary insects that are slowly devouring his skin and flesh. The other one is the worms. This is the most damaging. The worms. The character desperately tries to remove a titanically large fanged worm that they think is slowly eating them from the legs up. If they are holding a gun, they shoot themselves in the leg with it. If they are holding a melee weapon, they hit themselves in the leg with the melee weapon that they are holding. And I can attest how titanically horrific this is, because at one point we shot a guy with a needler, the hallucinogenic needle, and he was holding a rocket launcher. And he promptly pointed it down at his feet and shot himself. And he blew him and 4 people all around him. And it was that, it's that kind of thing. Like, there's the narrative stuff, and I love the narrative stuff. I'm very kind of loose with things, but then there's that satisfaction of like you were saying, the gambler's high of rolling awesome on this, and a crazy thing happens.
Yeah. Prue even brought up games that use sanity. Cthulhu is the the poster boy for using sanity, or rather going insane and having those rules. And I like the Adventures in Middle Earth has shadow points, and I like games that have a not deterioration of the mind, but has some way of, you have your physical damage and then you have your mental damage. And I like games that have that mechanic in there, because in the beginning it might not be as harsh, but as you start, devolving mentally, it just becomes this like this situation where the players are trying to survive through attrition, because physically they could get through something, but mentally they can't, because whether they're imagining things, or they're scratching at themselves, or they're acting paranoid, or something like that. Now, I do have a slight problem with people going from complete sanity to like complete psychosis. Like, I think there should be a middle ground. So I created a little chart that for 5e that kind of parallels exhaustion, that we called despair, which is like far more, it's not as punishing. So it's, you can become forgetful, or you can become paranoid or confused and things like that, and recover from it like you would recover from exhaustion. But I do like sanity mechanics. I really do. I think it sets, I think if you're going to institute sanity rules, it really sets the tone for what you're trying to do. And that's, it doesn't necessarily have to be a horror game, but it could be like, I don't know, a very dark, it could be like dark battlefields, or like, going into the dark reaches of dungeon crawling or something like that, where, you get that one person that survives and they're babbling.
Well, and like the thing of instituting a rule for it, and we were talking about that earlier, by playing with a rule, you realize why it exists. In the same way, because there is a rule that exists in like Call of Cthulhu or something, or World of Darkness, which is about sanity or morality or whatever you want to call it, that makes that into an inherent like facet of the game. So you're literally kind of like, if you institute in like D&D, because there is no, like, outside of the Dungeon Master's Guide has a sanity stat. It says you can institute a new stat called sanity. Because it has that stat, you basically can make it into a codified part. Like, you can make the idea of psychological trauma into an actual facet of the mechanical world, which I think is a really good way of going about it,
And with mental damage, it doesn't have to be a horror setting or even a dark setting. Even the most righteous paladin killing the most evil of creature, they would still feel something for killing a creature. It would still harm them. I'm not saying like to the levels of complete insanity, but I mean, soldiers, even though they know they're as evil as they come, they still come back with PTSD and all that. So so you can't implement it that way. Like, they're just losing a bit of themselves every time they kill a creature.
Yeah. Prue mentioned, says I generally like temporary deterioration, like sanity points, shadow points, and exhaustion. And I think sometimes people get into arguments in forums about games that actually solve the situation they're arguing about. So, for example, in 5th edition, the Dungeon Master's Guide is completely made up of like optional rules, because that's how they wanted to create it. Like you said, they have sanity points. They have rules for extending out rest periods. They have rules for not excessive damage. When you suffer damage and you suffer effects from being hit very hard, like broken bones and bruising and scarring and things like that, getting your eye poked out by a spear or something, those rules already exist. And when I see sometimes in forums like people are arguing over whether it should or shouldn't exist, and I'm like, but it's an optional rule that already, A, there's a mechanic for it, and B, it's optional. So if you want it in your game, you open up the book to page whatever, and then you put that in your game. And if you don't want to open the book to that page, you don't. It's not either or. It's like you can pick one and play that way, and then choose not to play that way. And it specifically says they're optional. So I mean, there's rules for like honor systems in there. There's rules for like you say, sanity. I mean, like they have a recovery system where you can extend a long rest out to a week. So I don't understand where people are like, oh, 5e is terrible because player characters just get to recover too quickly. Well, decide to change it, have your players agree to it, and move on. I don't know. I find it just very bizarre.
Well, it comes down to what people expect from the game. What people expect from when people talk about when certain types of gamers or people who play role-playing games or whatever talk about the game experience, they sometimes talk about it in a very different way. They're clearly thinking about something very, very different from what most people have in mind. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's literally difference of opinion. Like there are literally some people who are just cool with tell me who to hit. Literally, don't give me this thing of like, oh, the orcs are hungry. No, literally, just tell me orcs kill, yes, no. Just give me this binary thing, and that's cool. But it's very important that you should make it like very abundantly clear in like we've talked about things like session zeros, discussions of these things. Word of advice to any newbie GMs: if you're going to institute any of these rules that we've talked about, or any rules that you want to talk about, either write it down somewhere that the players can access, or just straight up tell them like every other day. Because like one of the house rules that I made, one of the rules that I made for my Fantasy Age game is I just said, there is no encumbrance in this game. Like, I straight up trust you guys. It doesn't matter, you guys, there is just no encumbrance. And every other session, somebody is always going like, Laith, how much does this weigh? And I'm like, nothing. It doesn't weigh anything. We're not keeping track of that. Okay, I can't be bothered. And they're kind of like, oh, well, in that case, I'm going to walk around carrying a horse. And I'm kind of like, no, you can't carry a horse. You will just die. I will strike you with lightning.
In the chat, Jared says some players become very averse to rules that degrade their character's power. It moves the game away from a power fantasy and more towards a survival horror. And I think that encompasses a lot of rules that we're talking about, because some people like survival horror, right? Yeah. It's the let's say post-apocalyptic, right? Hey, I found a gas can that had 3 gallons of gasoline in it and 3 canned goods and a working pistol or something. And for them, they just wanted to survive another day. Where some other player characters are like, do I really need to go hunting for food? Do I really need to find shelter? I hate this part of the game. I just want to, like you say, I just want to hit stuff and kill it. And you really need to find out whether your players are into that sort of thing, because it doesn't apply to, it may not apply to everyone equally. And sometimes it might even not apply to someone on that particular day, right? Someone's got their boss is just kicked their ass that day, and they just come to the table and they're like, look, can I just kill something? Yeah, look, yes, I love a deep game, but for right now, I just want to roll dice and kill shit. It's just like, sometimes it's just knowing who you are and knowing the people around you and just saying, yeah, let's use this rule, and then being willing to go, oh, we changed the rule, it doesn't work, let's change it back. Or, hey, let's modify it a little bit. I think it's a little too, even as a player, and I find this disingenuous, players shouldn't take advantage of either an existing rule or a modified rule that always benefits them, because you might as well just write down, hey, I win, and then fold the books up and leave, right? You see that a lot with character classes in Dungeons and Dragons, where someone's like, I want to make a new class and it has everything, it makes me more powerful than everyone else. It's like, well, that's not the game. You still have to play with other people, and that is the game, right? You've got to play with other people. So I just make rules.
I don't know, man. Single player D&D, dude. It's coming.
Well, I guess it does exist to play a video game.
There you go. No. Straight up. No. Player's handbook, monster manual, everything. Single player D&D. Surprise yourself. You'll fight up to here.
Sure.
That's I challenge somebody. That's a house rule that we need to bring. We bring it from video games in its entirety. Role play a single player game.
Oh my goodness. I guess if you have enough personalities, you could make your own player group.
Oh, it already exists. I stand corrected. Pick a path. Choose your own adventures. They are solo D&D. Lone Wolf. The Lone Wolf, series. What are they called? The Warlock Island. Warlock of Firetop Island, or whatever it was called. The fighting fantasy stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. There is a game company out there. I saw it at Origins that has a book series that is like a choose your own adventure, but you make your own character. And they give you a character sheet, and there's a book, and the book is written almost like a comic book. But based on your character and the choices you make, you flip to a specific page and you read the panels in that page, and it gives you choices, and you flip to another page in the book. So you can't read the book from cover to cover. It's like a choose your own adventure. And I think they have like a detective noir series, and there's one about a werewolf or something. It looked kind of interesting. They said it was like a very good travel game, like you're in a hotel and you're by yourself or something, and you've got to travel along. You're in an airplane. They said it was really good for that.
Yeah, mobile. This is a real tangent, but seriously, if you look on the mobile market, like the App Store or anything like that, you will actually find a lot of choose your own adventure games, and they are able to do things because they are computers that you wouldn't be able to do with a book. So they could realistically do survival horror things. Like I remember one which was really, really horrifying, which was if you read it, you read one section, and then you just carried on, and you would come back to the same page and it would have the same code saying it was the same place, but the flavor text would be different. And it was just this idea of, you would think, same place, I don't have to read it. But then there's just these little changes that you wouldn't notice, but you would notice if it was a book, because the only way that would happen is if they sent you to a different place. Yeah.
Oh, Prue says in our game we have the lamp. If a player shows up and says, I'm a lamp today, it means to basically leave them alone. Don't make them RP too hard because they're exhausted. They're just inventory. That's definitely a good rule, because you never know what someone feels like on any given day, and maybe they still want to interact with the group, but they're not really into it. So yeah, just saying, hey guys, I'm really not in the game. I want to be here, but I don't have the mental faculties to role play very hard. Let me just sit in the background. I think that's a great idea and a great rule and great house rule. And a lot of, in some ways, a lot of the house rules can be kind of like meta game rules for your group. I've heard of people giving players bonuses for bringing pizza or something, and beer, or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
One of my favorite things to do is I have a player who's very good at drawing and has beautiful dogs, and whenever he sends me pictures of his dogs and maps, I give him 200 experience points. I have another player who is an IT specialist, and whenever he fixes my computer for me, I give him another 200 experience points. You know, it's clearly just a thing of I have no compunctions. I'm completely corrupt. Yeah, that's one way of doing it.
All right. Well, we're getting to we've gotten to the hour mark. RP Gamer, got anything last things you'd want to say?
To be honest, no, I think everything's been covered.
Oh, sorry, man. I think I nicked some of your ideas. Oh, dear. No, did I? Did I nick your ideas, man? Sorry, shit.
No, you didn't. No.
Okay.
No, I've just been sat listening.
No, you're fine, man. You're fine. And always welcome as well. These are just general, like, hey guys, let's just talk about something and just go off the deep end or what have you. I don't have any ideas for World Building Wednesday, so if anyone's got any ideas out there, please pop them in. I'll put all the relevant information. I'll get on Discord, see what people are saying over there as well. And of course, anyone can pop into the chat and stick an idea in there as well. And of course, coming up Sunday is another Creators Conclave, hopefully.
Yes. No. I am here. I only missed the last one because I was on the bus.
You know, I actually wanted to bring up the James Gunn firing and how to put that into a role-playing game for the Creators Conclave. So I'm going to try to hold on to that if I can long enough.
I'll put it in the session notes because I like keep track. Like I've decided now that because I cannot remember anything, I'm just going to write everything that happens to me down. By the way, RP.
Yep.
I believe I speak along with DBJ by just inviting you straight up. Do you want to come to what's his name? Like, think about it and come back because I know you're quite busy on Sundays. But if you're free, we'll have you. Love to have you.
Yeah, I'll have to make myself free.
Okay. Nah, it's great.
Yep. So let's see what's real quick. Okay, anyone in looking in the chat, it's self-promotion time, so if you guys have to go, it's perfectly fine. But every D6th and D20th, we at Critical Hit Publishing release an adventure key to unlock your imagination and such. There are 3 to 4 page adventures, basically encounters. They have optional like NPCs and location things and threats and all that kind of stuff in them, so they can be used over and over again. They're like, I think they're $1, maybe $1.50 or something on drive-through. I think they're $1. I don't remember what we agreed to price them, but anyway. And our latest, the 8th release in the cinematic environments is out. Plains and Grasslands. This is PDF. The print-on-demand version's coming soon, but I know it's hideously expensive across the pond. And what else is coming? There's some other stuff in my head because I'm always writing something. I get a lot of ideas when I'm on the shitter. So yeah. You guys, anything you guys want to put out there? Oh, thanks for the stream, peas. Yep.
I can't really say much right now. Okay. The big thing of it is that interesting times are coming for both my channel and stuff. I've been mostly releasing free things, and they don't really have they don't have a place to exist. I mostly just put them up on like forums where they're related to. So I'm big on Fantasy Age, so I made like house rules of Fantasy Age, and I just put them up on the Fantasy Age forums. I'm you know, like for one thing, I can say that I will be moving them around and making them more accessible and more systems agnostic. But also more things are happening as well. And keep an eye on my channel because things will be happening there.
Sweet. And
Yep. If you missed my little intro at the start, I do videos like EBJ. Today I'm about to go after this record for finally after a few days off. I'm gonna go record a video about the Pokemon Ditto and whether it is actually a mimic or what, which I find interesting from our chat yesterday about mimics. So I'm gonna go do that. So stay tuned to the channel for that and all future videos I get around to doing.
all right, yeah. So I think that will be it for today. Thanks everybody for joining in, and those who watch the stream later on. As always, if anyone has any great ideas, please post them in the comments or join the Discord and talk with anyone there. And I will be signing out. Thank you, Laith. Thank you, Brian, for joining me. You guys have an open invitation. I just love interacting, so it's not believe me, it's not you're not disrupting anything. I don't write notes. I just come up with something, start to do this on the fly. So yeah, come with your best. So thanks guys. And
All right.